Hi, friends. Pastor Steve Miller from the Vermilion United Church of Christ. Wanted to take a little time with you this morning to talk about our reopening protocols. We are reopening our sanctuary for in-person worship on May the 16th. And this past weekend, our cabinet met and considered protocols that had been passed to them by a task force, and we have published them everywhere. But this morning, I wanted to take a little time to talk to you, and I've got my dear friend Jake Kirby here with me so that we can explain some of the decisions that we've made and let you know about how things are going to work. So I want to first say thank you to you, Jake, and to your committee for all the amazing work you've done over the past year, allowing us to really more in-depth look at the science and the health ramifications of the decisions that we make. And so I want to say thank you first, but then I also want to say, would you just prime us up with some of these ideas that led to these protocols? So thank you first, and why don't you talk a little bit about the protocols?
Yeah, no, thanks, Steve. So it's not been easy. I think you can guess that. There's a lot of people to talk to, a lot of sort of research to look into, a lot of choices to be made. Basically, and I've gotten a lot of help. So I know that I'm the face of this and I'm talking to people, but this is not only me. I want to thank so many people that were involved on the COVID task force, on the reopening committee, the cabinet, and just people I've talked to in the congregation. I've loved your input. It's been really helpful, and we've tried to sort of come up with something we think is reasonable, and achievable. The basis for this really, though, is following the CDC guidelines. So we really just want to see what the professionals, people much smarter than me, are thinking are good ways to engage in these public spaces. I think it's driven a lot by rising vaccinations, so lots of people are vaccinated. But vaccinations doesn't necessarily mean 100%. So we're trying to mitigate all these risks as much as possible and get people back into the church where they can feel safe. And so those are things that we're still employing, wearing masks and social distancing. We know those are the ways, whether you're vaccinated or not, to really stop the spread of this in our community and reduce the risk of being exposed and getting sick. So those are the sort of core traits that we're looking at, is how do we stop people that might be infected from getting this in the air and infecting other people.
So that's awesome. So when you come to worship with us on the 16th or any of the following Sundays, when you enter the building, at each doorway will be a welcome station that will include a hand washing station, sanitizing. The protocols themselves will be posted in a simplified form so you can remember what they are. If you don't have a mask with you, we will have extra masks here, but we will be asking everyone who comes into this building at first to be wearing a mask. Later on in the summer, that may change. Can we talk about the evolving nature of all this, Jake? We're going to all be wearing masks at first, but talk about how this might evolve as we move into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings. I mean, the bottom line that I think that people have to keep in mind is partly your own, protection, and you're vaccinated, so you're safe. But the bigger thing really is the community, and so that's often what we're looking at. Is what are the number of infections in our community, in our state, and whatnot. And so as more people are vaccinated, those numbers, and they are going down, right? And so we really are looking at those kinds of numbers to really determine this. And definitely once it gets to a low enough number, then we won't need to do these things. So that's really what's driving these things. But initially, we're going to go back being cautious and careful and conservative about this approach. And then when we sort of feel that the numbers are down and people are giving different messages and the CDC provides different guidance, then these things will change.
So that's perfect. So when we do come for these opening first worships, after you come through the welcome station, we will be spacing ourselves around the sanctuary. We'll have every other pew marked off, and then we'll just ask you to sit with a safe distance. That's 3 to 6 feet between you and another family pod. And again, we'll spread out. We'll have every part of the sanctuary open, and there'll be other possibilities to bring chairs in if we need to. We're not exactly sure how many people will come back at first, but we'll be spaced all around the sanctuary as we sit for these opening worships. Jake, tell us a little bit about, there have been questions about music and questions about children, like in a nursery. Can you talk about those two things a little bit?
Yeah, so we talked about those in a lot of different ways. Again, coronavirus is sort of this airborne virus, or not sort of, it is an airborne virus. And so the amount of air coming out of our mouth is what we're concerned about. And there's pretty good data showing that singing, if you sing correctly, right, you sing from your diaphragm and you're forcing lots of air out. So by its very nature is a much different interaction than just talking, if you will. And so even though we're wearing masks, we've talked to people, in the music group and done the research, and that is a really big concern. So we can have people in front sort of singing, but collectively, if there's lots of us all singing at once, that really, really increases the risk. So we're sort of talking about different ideas. Again, inside is different than outside, and so we can talk about a little bit going outside and how we can do more things outside. Again, because of the air. That's really what we're looking at in these kinds of cases, is how to do that. Yeah.
So that's what we'll do to start. We're going to ask a member of our choir or our member of our music team to do the singing for us. Gretchen will be singing the first Sunday. She'll be masked up front, where I will be spaced up here, but she will be doing the singing on our behalf. But what we have planned to do is actually go outside at the end of the service so we can outside sing together, because the risk is a whole lot lower when we get outside. So at the end of every service, we're going to try to go outside, weather permitting, to sing a final blessing together so that we can get the feel of that. And again, as things evolve, we hope to open up that. How about kids in the nursery, Jake?
Yeah, so again, the kids basically are not vaccinated. I mean, maybe there's hope that soon 12 to 16-year-olds can also get vaccinated. And so, admittedly, it's very rare that kids will get sick from this, but it does happen. And also, we know that kids can pass it. So a lot of this is really just concern of movement too, right? So we can all be seated in our seats in our pews and spaced apart. That's good. But when we need kids to move to go to the nursery or come back or go to the front of the church and come back, there's a lot of passing that's going on real close, and a way to exchange air real easily, right? And so that's, again, just where we're being conservative at first, is trying to sort of keep pods within their pods where we know it's safe, and lowering that risk throughout when we're inside the church especially. Yeah.
So we will be welcoming children here. We will not have a nursery, so you need to understand that, but kids can certainly be in the worship, and it's kids 3-year-olds and up who will be wearing masks, and most of our kids are wearing masks at school, so they're already used to that. I will be doing a children's story, but again, because of that movement thing, I won't be asking kids to come down at first. We'll keep kids where they are, and I know that the adults like the children's story anyway, probably better than my sermon some of the times, so we'll just let people stay and do that. Okay, just lastly, Jake, Coffee High, for a lot of people, that's the big deal. We get a cookie and a donut and all that, but we're not going to be doing that at first. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and again, I love Coffee High as well. I think that, part of that, we're hoping that part of the community is just coming back and being together during church, and that's a good starting point. The reason we're concerned about Coffee High is a couple reasons. One, we go down into the basement where there's a lot less air, right? So again, going back to air, the amount of volume of air in the sanctuary for being in here for an hour is a very different risk than being in the basement where the volume is significantly lower. And of course, Coffee High means you're eating and you're drinking, right? And so that means you have to sort of take your mask off to do both. And when you're eating or drinking, especially some people spit a lot, I don't know, right? But that's the idea. So releasing droplets into the air, those kinds of things are what we're really trying to avoid. So that's our sort of, guidance right now, is as far as we know with the levels what they are, is to sort of avoid that at first. And then as we sort of look at the numbers going forward, we can bring some of these things back in safe ways.
So that's also then part of the idea of after we sing and go outside, if you want to have a little fellowship time outside, if you want to visit with some people you haven't seen in a while, we'll be outside, again, where the risk is considerably lower, and we won't be exchanging food and all that. Now, communion is a different story. We feel committed to being able to share communion, and so our idea for the summer is that when we do have communion Sundays, we'll be doing those services totally outside. We'll invite people, again, to either bring their own elements, or for people who don't don't do that, we're going to have some prepackaged elements available out there for people to take. So we're going to spread out. We have this beautiful lawn to the next, our peace garden, and we're going to block off the driveway. So lots of us can be outside together. We'll bring a sound system out there. We'll do the whole service out there for the first Sunday of each summer month, so that in that way we can share communion. It'll be a little bit like a picnic, kind of a worship service. And again, being outside is a whole lot safer in all of these things. So we've got ideas planned to move forward, and what we're really trying to do is to move as slowly as possible to keep us safe, both in terms of our physical health, but also safe in terms of how we care for each other and what people's different levels of fears are as we come back as a worshiping community. So Jake, thank you so very much for helping us. You want to say anything last about any of these things?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that I've had a unique perspective in all of this because I've heard from people that are really concerned and people that don't really seem that concerned, right? And I really think that's an important thing to think about as a church. Maybe you don't agree with whatever we do and whatever side of it, but really to come together and to sort of be compassionate, loving towards one another, that's really what we're going for here. You don't have to necessarily agree with what we're doing, I think, but more so just to sort of act out of love that we can get back together as a community. That's really what our goal is, and we'll get back to normal eventually.
Jake, thanks to you and the committee and all the folks. And this has been an amazing year where we have worked hard together to continue to stay connected as a family of faith. And we've done a pretty amazing job. And I thank everybody for all of that. And I hope that in whatever way, now just that quick reminder too, right now here in the sanctuary, we're putting up the cameras, getting ready, because if you don't feel comfortable with any of these choices that we're making to come back, then you may stay at home. We'll still be using YouTube and Facebook and our phone calling stream, so you can continue to participate even remotely. And our new friends from across the country who've been joining us, they're going to continue to be able to do that as we move forward. So we hope that in some way, whether it's here in our building or whether it is on the camera somewhere else around the country or wherever you are, we'll see you on May the 16th as we get back together. God bless.